They double your salary. They double your variable incentive pay. They give you an immediate grant of new equity, more shares than you've ever gotten before. The CEO is going to fly you and your family on the private plane to a meeting in Disneyland. The real counteroffer is going to be a 15% raise and a new title, maybe a few extra shares. She said yes on Friday. She said no on Monday. Nothing about her situation actually changed. Counteroffers kill more executive searches than bad interviews, weak compensation, or slow processes combined. And almost every founder and recruiter I know handles them the same way. They try to fight the counteroffer after it arrives. By then, it's already too late. I'm going to show you my exact system for defeating a counteroffer before it ever hits the table. I call it the counteroffer wrap. And after 25 years and more than 400 executive placements, it has a success rate north of 95%. More than 25 years ago, I lost a deal that changed the trajectory of my entire career. I was just starting out in recruiting, working at the top executive search firm in New York City. I was young, hungry, and obsessed over every detail. I had a candidate, strong, aligned, ready to go. And then a counteroffer came out of nowhere, completely blindsided me. I lost the candidate, I lost the client, I lost my confidence and the commission. Complete failure. I remember sitting there at my desk afterward, replaying every conversation, trying to figure out what I missed. My mentor at the time, one of the best recruiters I've ever known, walked over, and instead of telling me what I did wrong, he said something I'll never forget. This is my failure, not yours. I should have taught you this before it happened. And then he taught it to me. He walked me through exactly how counteroffers work, the psychology, the timing, the emotional manipulation, and most importantly, how to prepare a candidate so thoroughly that the counteroffer never stands a chance. I never made that mistake again. In fact, I became known for it. Our office had more than 60 top executive search professionals, some of the best in New York City. A few of us would later leave to build hotjobs.com. And in that office, I became known as the master of the counteroffer wrap. I started training other recruiters on it. I refined it over years, then decades. And what I'm about to share with you is the system I've built over 25 years. It works. And it works because it doesn't fight the counteroffer after it arrives. It makes the counteroffer irrelevant before the candidate ever walks into their boss's office. But first, let me show you why counteroffers are so dangerous and why even the smartest candidates fall for them. Here's what you need to understand. A counteroffer doesn't change the candidate's situation. It changes their emotional state. A candidate spends weeks, sometimes months, building conviction about a new role. They've done the research, they've met the team, they've made a rational decision. Then they give notice. And within 24 hours, their current company makes them feel more valued than they've felt in years. For 48 hours, they feel wanted, important, appreciated. And that feeling is enough to override weeks of rational analysis. A counteroffer is never about what they're offering. It's a permission slip to avoid the terror of change. The relief of staying feels identical to the excitement of being valued. But relief is temporary. The problems that made them want to leave don't disappear because someone offered them more money to stay. They just get more expensive. Here's the thing. Resignations are only ever received in one of two ways. If the candidate walks in with full conviction and delivers the news as a final decision, the conversation immediately shifts to a transition plan. The manager accepts it. They start talking about handoffs and timelines. But if the candidate walks in with hesitation, as if they're asking for permission, it triggers a completely different response. Insecure managers who have to report up would rather throw money and temporary band-aids at the problem than face the embarrassment, energy, time, and effort of replacing someone. That hesitation is the opening the counteroffer walks through. So how do you prevent it? You build conviction so deep that the candidate never hesitates. Now, here's something critical that most people miss about this system. Everything I'm about to walk you through happens before the offer, not during, not after, before. This is the pre-offer stage, and it exists for one reason: to make the offer a formality, not a gamble. If there's anything other than a resounding yes to the questions I'm about to ask, the candidate is not ready to receive an offer. They might need more information, more conversations with the team, more time with the CEO, more courtship, and that's fine. Because extending an offer to someone who isn't fully convicted is how you lose them to a counteroffer 3 days later. And only when this entire process has been successfully executed, only when the ground is fertile and the stage has been fully set, do you extend the offer. And when you do, the chances of acceptance are maximized because you've done the work in advance. Here's the system. I've refined it over more than 25 years. It starts before the offer, before the close, before the counteroffer is even a possibility. It starts with 3 questions. I call them the KTW questions. KTW. Know, think, want. Before I ever let a candidate get to the offer stage, I need them to answer all 3 with a resounding yes. First, do you know what the job is? Not the title, not the job description, the actual mission, the specific problems, the strategic objectives this role exists to drive, the success factors that define what winning looks like in 12 months. If a candidate can't articulate what the job actually is, they're not ready to accept it. And if they're not clear on the job, a counteroffer becomes an easy escape from ambiguity. Second, do you think you can do this job? Not in general, specifically. Can you hit these success factors? Can you build this team? Can you deliver these outcomes in this timeline? I walk them through each success factor from the blueprint and ask, have you done this before? How? Where? This isn't an interview. The interview is over. This is a commitment conversation. I'm asking them to look at the specific deliverables and say out loud, yes, I can do this. Third, do you want to do this job? With this team, for this mission, this is where it gets emotional. Know is intellectual. Think is competence. Want is conviction. When someone says, I want this, they've committed at every level: head, hands, and heart. And that 3-part commitment is what makes a counteroffer irrelevant. Because the counteroffer can only address compensation. It can't address know, think, and want. If someone has said out loud, I know what this job is, I believe I can do it, and I want it, the psychological cost of reversing all 3 statements is enormous. That's step 1. Once a candidate has answered know, think, and want, I do something most recruiters never do. I ask them to close their eyes, not literally, but mentally. I ask them to imagine the future. I want you to picture yourself 6 months into this role. You've been there half a year. What does total success look like? And I let them talk. Picture the team you've built, the people you've hired. Picture the first big win, the board meeting where you present results that exceeded expectations. Feel the energy, the momentum, the sense that you're building something that matters. Picture the relationships you've built with the CEO, with the leadership team, with the engineers and the salespeople who are executing your vision. I let them sit in that vision. I let it become real. Because here's what's happening. Neurologically, when you vividly imagine a future state, your brain processes it almost identically to a real experience. The emotional weight of that imagined future starts influencing present-day decisions. That future starts pulling at them. And once it's pulling, I take them to the uncomfortable part. Now, to get that future, there's one thing standing between you and it. You have to give notice at your current company. That's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to sit across from your boss, someone you respect, and tell them you're leaving. That's hard. But notice what just happened. That discomfort feels small compared to the future you just imagined. Giving notice isn't a leap into the unknown anymore. It's the last annoying step between you and the career you just described. This is the reframe. Most candidates think of resignation as the beginning of uncertainty. I've just made it the end of an obstacle. The future is pulling them forward. The resignation is just the door they have to walk through to get there. Now, while they're in that space, with the future pulling and the resignation reframed as a small hurdle, I deliver what I call the counter-offer wrap. And here's the key. I make it grandiose, deliberately, almost embarrassingly over the top. I say, let me tell you exactly what's going to happen when you give notice. Because I've seen this play out hundreds of times, and it's always the same movie. You're going to walk into your boss's office, you're going to say the words, and your boss is going to do one of three things. Option one, they panic. They immediately ask you to hold off. They say, don't do anything yet. Let me talk to the CEO. Let me see what we can do. They'll ask for 48 hours, maybe a week. Option two, they get emotional. You're one of our best people. I can't believe this. What did we do wrong? What would it take to keep you? They'll make you feel guilty for leaving. Option three, the full court press. And this is the one I want you to really picture. Within 24 hours, the CEO calls you personally. The board member you've always admired sends you a text. They don't just offer you a raise, they double your salary. They double your variable incentive pay. They give you an immediate grant of new equity, more shares than you've ever gotten before. New promotion, bigger title, but they're not done. The CEO is going to fly you and your family on the private plane to a meeting in Disneyland, where they will personally present your new compensation package over dinner. They're going to pay off your mortgage. They're going to name a conference room after you. They'll say things they've never said before. You're critical to our future. We can't do this without you. We had big plans for you that we hadn't shared yet. And in that moment, it will feel incredible. You'll feel more valued than you've ever felt in your entire career. I pause and I let the silence sit. Now here's why I make this so absurdly over the top. Because when the actual counteroffer arrives, and it will, I want it to feel like a letdown. I've just described the CEO flying them to Disneyland on a private jet and paying off their mortgage. A real counteroffer is going to be a 15% raise and a new title, maybe a few extra shares. It can't possibly compete with the movie I just played in their head. The gap between the grandiose version and the real version makes it almost embarrassing. The candidate thinks, that's it? That's the big counteroffer Dave warned me about? And that disappointment makes it easy to say no. But I keep going because the grandiosity created the opening. Now I drive the logic home. If you were this critical, if you were this valued, if they had these big plans, why did it take your resignation for them to tell you? Where was this promotion 6 months ago when you were doing the same work? Where was this raise a year ago when you asked for it and they said the budget wasn't there? Where was the CEO's personal call last quarter when you were grinding through that product launch with no recognition? The answer is nowhere, because you weren't leaving. And the moment you stop being a flight risk, all of that attention disappears. The promotion will be a title. The raise will be the last one you get for 2 years. The CEO will stop calling after 2 weeks. Here's the data. The Wall Street Journal and Fortune have both published research on this. Between 80 and 90% of people who accept a counteroffer leave within 12 months anyway. Not because the counter wasn't generous, because the underlying problems that made them want to leave never got fixed. And now it's worse, because once you've shown your cards, once they know you were looking, the trust is broken. It's like crossing the Rubicon. Your boss will notice every long lunch, every day you're dressed nicer than usual. They'll wonder if you're interviewing. Every time you take a call in the hallway, they'll suspect. You go from being a trusted leader to a retention risk. And retention risks don't get the best projects. They don't get the most critical assignments. They get managed carefully until a replacement is found. That's the reality of a counteroffer. Not the version they'll sell you on Sunday night. The version that plays out over 12 months. At this point, I confirm the reasons they wanted to leave in the first place. Let's go back to where we started. What were the 3 reasons you began exploring this opportunity? They list them out loud again. And then I ask the question that seals it. Given everything we've discussed, if your company offered you a counteroffer, would you take it? In 95% of cases, the answer is immediate. I would never take a counteroffer. When I hear those words, I know the exercise worked. But I'm not done, because there's one more moment where candidates stumble, the actual resignation conversation. Most candidates make a critical mistake. They ask for permission instead of delivering information. I've been thinking about leaving is asking for permission. It opens a negotiation. It invites the counteroffer. It makes the boss think there's a chance to save it. That hesitation, that softness in how they deliver the news, triggers a completely different response from the manager. Insecure managers who have to report up would rather throw money and temporary band-aids at the problem than face the embarrassment of admitting they lost someone. The hesitation is the opening the counteroffer walks through. Delivering information closes that door. I coach every candidate on exactly how to have this conversation, and the word final must appear at least twice. Walk in, sit down, thank them for the experience, then deliver the news clearly. I want to let you know that I've made a final decision to accept a new opportunity. I'm giving my final notice. My final day will be April 4th. I've put together some thoughts on transitioning my responsibilities, and I'd love to discuss that with you. Final decision, final notice, final day. That word does the work. It signals to the manager that this is not a negotiation. This is not an opening for a counteroffer. This is a transition conversation. When a candidate says, I've been thinking about leaving, the manager hears, convince me to stay. When a candidate says, I've made a final decision, the manager hears, help me transition. The former gets them focused on putting together a counteroffer. The latter gets them focused on a transition plan. And counteroffers are always emotionally messy. Transition plans are professional. Deliver information. Don't ask for permission. Use the word final twice. Let me put the whole system together. Step 1, the KTW questions. Before the offer, confirm, know, think, and want. Get verbal commitment at all 3 levels. Step 2, mental map the future. Have them visualize total success at 6 months. Make it vivid. Make it emotional. Let the future start pulling. Step 3, reframe the resignation. Position it as the last step between them and the future they just described. Not a leap, a doorway. Step 4, the counteroffer wrap. Make it grandiose. Walk them through every scenario in vivid detail. Cite the data. Paint the 12-month aftermath. Make it so dramatic that the real thing can only disappoint. Step 5, confirm the exit reasons. Bring them back to why they started exploring in the first place. Get them to say it out loud. Step 6, get the verbal commitment. Would you take a counteroffer? Wait for it. I would never take a counteroffer. Step 7, coach the resignation. Deliver information. Don't ask for permission. Use the word final at least twice. Final decision, final notice, final day. Script the conversation. Remove all ambiguity. This system works because it doesn't fight the counteroffer. It makes the counteroffer irrelevant by building conviction so deep that the counter has nothing to compete with. The candidate has already committed intellectually, competence-wise, and emotionally through KTW. They've already visualized their future in the new role. They've already heard the counteroffer movie and dismissed it. They've already said out loud they'd never accept one. By the time the real counteroffer arrives, it's not a temptation. It's an inconvenience. And remember, this entire system is pre-offer. Every step happens before you extend the offer letter. If at any point during this process the candidate hesitates, That's not a failure. That's information. It means they need more courtship, more conversations, more time with the team. Go back and fill the gap. Only when you've completed all 7 steps and the candidate is fully convicted do you extend the offer. At that point, the offer isn't a question. It's a confirmation of a decision that's already been made. That's how you turn an offer into a formality instead of a coin flip. Now, let me address one more thing. Because even with this system, it only works if you've built genuine conviction throughout the process. And conviction is different from interest. I stopped asking candidates, "Are you interested?" years ago. It was the most expensive question in my vocabulary. Interest sounds like conviction. It looks like conviction. Candidates say, "This is exciting and I love what you're building." But interest evaporates the moment the counteroffer arrives. Conviction holds. Here's the difference. An interested candidate says, "This is a great opportunity." A convicted candidate says, "I'm leaving my current role because it can't give me what I need, and this role can." An interested candidate is weighing options. A convicted candidate has already decided. They're just completing the process. At every stage of your hiring process, create moments where the candidate has to verbalize their commitment. Not, "Are you interested?" but "Why are you leaving?" Not, "Does this excite you?" but "If we offer, will you accept?" Each verbalization raises the psychological cost of reversal. Interest is a maybe wearing a suit. Conviction is the only thing that survives a counteroffer. And the KTW framework, plus the mental mapping, plus the counteroffer wrap, is how you build conviction so strong that the counteroffer doesn't stand a chance. Here's what I want you to take away. You didn't lose the candidate to a counteroffer. You lost them to your own failure to prepare for one. The counteroffer trap is entirely preventable, but you have to do the work before it arrives. KTW, know, think, want. Get commitment at all 3 levels. Mental map the future. Make the new role vivid and real before they resign. Deliver the counteroffer wrap. Make it so grandiose that the real thing can only disappoint. Coach the resignation. Deliver information, not permission. Do this, and you'll never lose another candidate to a counteroffer. If this was helpful, subscribe. I'm open sourcing the playbook I've used to place more than 400 executives at companies backed by Sequoia, General Catalyst, and Insight Partners. Next video, I'm breaking down why you should map talent 12 months before you need to hire, and exactly how to build the pipeline that eliminates panic hiring forever. I'll see you there.